How's it going? My name is Ryan Mirin, and today I'm going to be doing a Unit 4 review, and I'm in Group C. So to start off, what we're going to be reviewing in this unit is the rhetorical situation, reading and writing, claims and evidence, reading and writing, and the reasoning and organization, reading and writing. Now we'll be going through all of these and basically reviewing everything we saw in the Unit 4 videos from them. From all of these, we learned how to determine the rhetorical situation and describe it, prepare acceptable introductions and conclusions for the rhetorical setting, identify and describe an argument's overreaching theme, prepare a thesis that will require defense and may include an outline of the arguments, recognize and explain how to apply development methodologies, and to progress an argument, use proper development procedures. So to start off, rhetorical situation and reading. Our aim is to find out what choices the writer makes in light of the rhetorical situation audience. First, a writer considers the audience's age, genders, and values when writing. These factors influence the author's rhetorical choices. And to help detect rhetorical situations, the rhetorical triangle is also utilized. Here we can kind of see how the audience is revealed by the text in the following way. You see how it goes from first the writer, then the audience, then the audience reads the text, obviously, and then from there, the reader of the text follows through with the rhetorical analysis. And this is what leads into the considerations of the audience, which also influences the rhetorical choices that are made, or vice versa. Next, we see, to continue with rhetorical situation reading, the goals to figure out what choices the writer chooses in light of the rhetorical situation, exigence, and occasion. The terms occasion and context are frequently used interchangeably. The present situation of a piece of writing is referred to as the occasion. The society in which it exists is the context, also known as the bigger picture. The speaker's exigence is what motivates him to create the text. Sometimes it is just the occasion. The audience, what is their mood, where are they, is the most important aspect of the occasion. Exigence is concerned largely with the speaker, current concern, and their recent inspiration, which is what the exigence is. Now, continuing rhetorical situation on the reading side, the aim is to find out what choices the writer makes in light of the rhetorical situation purpose. A text can fulfill multiple purposes and be implicit, meaning that the author may not just come out and say the purpose. The writer's purpose is to accomplish something with his or her text. The writer's choices aid in achieving that goal. Now here we can see the rhetorical triangle, where we have the writer and speaker on top, audience bottom right, text speech bottom left, and then context in the middle, which kind of brings it all together, as you can see right here. Next, we have the rhetorical situation on the writing side. Our goal is to write an effective rhetorical analysis essay introduction. The rhetorical situation is divided into 6 sections: exigence, purpose, audience, context, writer, and message are all important factors to consider. When writing RA, use the following rhetorical choices: writing in the third person, referencing the text, referring to the author by last name, and moving chronologically through the text are all examples of academic writing. Now, following with the rhetorical analysis thesis, you must use a cause and effect thesis to answer the question how. Now you can see the writer's rhetorical choices are the cause, and the effect is the text meaning, either the text meaning as purpose, and the reader's reaction, which is the effect of what we just went through before. Now, following through with the rhetorical situation on the writing side, the aim for both the synthesis essay and the argument essay is you must write an appropriate introduction. In comparison to the rhetorical analysis essays, the rhetorical situation for synthesis and argument essays will be different. Using rhetorical choices in writing argument/synthesis essays, you must write in the first either in the first or third person, or relate to a personal issue, fight for what you actually believe, consider growth tactics, so how you want to direct the audience, and remember to generate a powerful voice on the page and back up statements with evidence. These are all crucial parts of using rhetorical choices in writing an argument or synthesis essay. Continuing with the rhetorical situation on the writing end, the aim here is an argument essay, so you must use an appropriate conclusion. To gain a sophistication point, you must be able to articulate an argument's limitations by placing it in a larger perspective. Make good rhetorical choices that reinforce your argument and have a persuasive argument until the very end. Don't just restate your thesis. Forget to create a conclusion. Don't lose sight of the aim of your conclusion. Don't use a cliche. Don't state the obvious. And also don't utilize sentimentality in your conclusion. What you do want to do, though, is consider the counter-argument, employ understatement, broaden/think about the consequences, and build connections to leave a lasting impression. These are all good things that you should do in writing with a rhetorical in an argument essay. Now, with claims and evidence on the reading side, the idea is to figure out which portions of an argument support the main point. Your thesis should include the following information: your topic, why it is essential, and an assertion or claim with a path of reasoning to follow. When working through the prompt, keep the following in mind. Underline clear lines, divide text into 3 pieces, and try to grasp the broader picture. Continuing with claims and evidence on the reading side, our main goal is to learn how to decipher a text's metaphorical meaning in order to comprehend its main point. Always remember to look at the paragraph from a distance. If you look at it too closely, you'll miss the broader picture. Watch for words that form a pattern, and look for immediate switches in tone or style, and look for transitional words. Understand the literal meaning of each paragraph before moving on to the figurative meaning, and pay attention to the syntax. Now, with claims and evidence on the writing end, our goal is to construct a thesis statement with enough depth and sophistication to be convincing. The most powerful thesis statements are likely to elicit criticism or controversy, as well as stimulate more discussion. Evidence and defense are important parts of this. Respond to the question with a perspective that demands proof or defense, and write a thesis statement that is just right in your eyes. When the thesis statement is missing, it is difficult to construct an effective essay. And while this might seem obvious, it happens all the time. Writing a solid thesis necessitates the pursuit of a complex, original perspective that requires proof and defense. Thesis statements that are effective will neither be too obvious or too ludicrous, and this can easily happen to anyone when writing an essay. Now, continuing with claims and evidence on the writing end, the idea is to write a thesis statement that, whether expressly or implicitly, previews that line of reasoning. Some thesis statements feature a line of reasoning or a preview of points in addition to a claim. The structure of an essay might be established by a line of argument or a list of arguments. Previewing points of an argument or particular evidence in the thesis is not always necessary. Your argument can be constructed using a line of reasoning. Continuing with the same idea that on the claims and evidence writing side, that to write a thesis statement, whether expressly or implicitly, previews that line of reasoning. A claim that needs to be proven or defended, as well as a preview of the line of reasoning, are all parts of a thesis statement. Remember, you must not consider just your claim, but also your process of reasoning when writing a thesis statement. You can either explicitly or implicitly preview a line of reasoning. Continuing with claims and evidence on the writing end, by including qualifiers, we hope to improve the quality of the thesis statement. When a thesis statement contains qualifier or qualifiers, it is usually easier to prove or defend. The majority of claims contain qualifiers. Qualifiers can play a significant role in the organization and development of your essay. Now, what is a qualifier exactly? It is a word or a phrase that serves to demonstrate a concept or claim's limits. Now, on the reading and organization on the reading end, our purpose is to concentrate on the numerous ways in which an author could produce content using the compare-contrast method. This is a very efficient method, and a writer can use a variety of techniques including comparison and contrast. Comparative contrast is based on the similar comparison categories. Comparison/contrast is a flexible strategy of development that can appear in a variety of texts. Don't expect the comparison and contrast to appear the same or have the same format or structure every time, as this isn't the reality. Continuing with reading and organization on the reading end, our purpose is to concentrate on the numerous ways in which an author could produce content using a compare-contrast method, just like in the last slide. Methods of development: narration, cause and effect, comparison, contrast, definition, description are all techniques for a writer to build and arrange their reasoning and offer the audience with the means to follow that reasoning. By offering a structure through which we may follow an author's logic, comparison/contrast is often designed to make our job as readers easier. Continuing with the reading end of reading and organization, the goal is to concentrate on how an author might build a work using definition and description techniques. A writer can use definition and description as two of numerous strategies of development. Although definition and description are closely connected, they are not identical. Definition and description are flexible development approaches that may appear differently in different texts. Methods of development are as following: techniques for a writer to build and arrange their reasoning while also allowing the audience to follow along. Narration, cause and effect, compare and contrast, definition or description. Continuing with reading and organization, following with what the difference between definition and description. Definition is what something is, while description is what something is like. The exact meaning of anything, generally a word, is given in a definition. Definitions must be precise and accurate. They shouldn't differ much from one person to the next. A description is usually longer and more specific, and it varies from person to person. It is not always as precise or accurate as a definition. Following through with reading and organization on the reading end, the goal during the multiple choice of the part of the exam is to recognize and explain the application of development methodologies. Modes of development are as following in ways in which a writer can build and organize their reasoning while also allowing the audience to follow along. Still, again, the narration, cause and effect, compare, contrast, definition, or description. There will be a passage that employs a development method and a question that asks you to recognize or identify how a development method is used. Following with this same goal, keeping in mind that during the multiple choice of the exam, we have to be able to recognize and explain the application of development methodologies. A question that asks you how to explain how development approaches interact with one another or with the remainder of the text. There's also a question that asks you how to explain how a development approach aids the author in achieving his or her goal. And you always want to pay attention on how an author uses development approaches. During the exam, the multiple choice questions emphasize the importance of development approaches in assisting both readers and writers. Now, on to the writing end of reading and organization. One goal is to use the comparison and contrast method to outline and advance an argument. When writing an essay that needs students to investigate the link between two different objects, compare and contrast can be a useful format. A successful compare and contrast relies on similar comparison categories, and in an essay, comparison/contrast is a flexible development paradigm that can take many various shapes and forms. Continuing with the writing end of reading and organization, things to keep in mind for importance of compare and contrast. When examining the relationship between two different objects to indicate preference or to indicate distinctiveness, this is a useful tool. Using comparative categories that are similar, and it can be utilized for as much or as little as you need to develop your point. Continuing with that, the goal is to focus on advancing an argument utilizing definition and description approaches. Both definitions and descriptions can be useful tools for advancing an argument. When used together, definition and description may be quite effective. Definition and description are adaptive development models that can assume many various shapes and forms in an essay. Now, after all we've just reviewed, the key takeaways to remember that are to determine the author's choices and why he made them in his work. Recognize the rhetorical context, exigence, purpose, audience, context, writer, and message. After your claim, be sure your thesis contains a path of reasoning, and strong defensible thesis statements that elicit debate are required. Also, always remember that writers employ a variety of development approaches to create a flow and organize thoughts within an essay. And when examining the connection between two different items, comparison and contrast is useful, and it can be utilized as much or as little as needed. Also keeping in mind with the definition and description differences. Well, that's going to be it, guys. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the review.